Howdy, y'all. Andy here, and welcome to another episode of King's Comics. Now, I've had a couple people ask me about my DVD collection and even my video game collection, but I haven't, or I guess it's not DVD, but Blu-rays. Either way, I haven't actually gone over that. And then Lone Wolf 245 was actually, I guess, contacting me on Instagram, chatting it up, and asking me about it, and I realized, yeah, I hadn't done a video on that yet. So today I will be going over my Blu-ray and DVD collection. And actually, I've got some digital movies as well, but I'm just going to go with the physical movies today. I think I counted about 35 today, but I've also lent some out to people, so I'm probably not counting all of them. Either way, let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and start off with both of the Avengers movies, and most of the DVDs and Blu-rays I present are going to be Steelbook. I really love the Steelbooks. They're pretty durable feeling, and I know I like having the weight in my hand. But either way, yeah, we've got both two of the Avengers movies, which are the Avengers Age of Ultron and then the original Avengers movies. I got these on sale on eBay, so I capitalized. Actually, I think I got Age of Ultron from a friend who was selling steelbooks. But I'm still trying to get Infinity War, and then I'm probably going to hop on Endgame as soon as it comes out. But yeah, managed to grab those for a good price, which is the only reason why I have them. Next up, we've got Batman Begins as well as The Big Lebowski. Now, Batman Begins, that's a pretty obvious choice for me, but The Big Lebowski, actually, I realized I'd never seen it. And in fact, I actually really enjoyed it. I get what all the fuss was about. It's often touted as like this legendary comedy, and some of it would have definitely flown over my head if I had watched it a year or two back. I'll admit, man, I'm like 26 now. Either way, yeah, I really enjoyed seeing it, but I should have probably gotten to it a lot sooner, admittedly. And then Batman Begins is Batman Begins. I don't know why this took me so long to get to, but honestly, I didn't regret it at all. It's the Nolan Batman trilogy is easily just the best Batman movies out there. I loved all three of them, and I mean, obviously, The Dark Knight reigns supreme. But either way, I heard Batman Begins was bad for a little bit. I don't know why or how, but yeah, was worth every second of it. Then let's get into Chronicle. So Chronicle was by Josh Trank, the same guy who did Fantastic or Fantastic Four, the new one that was somehow even worse than the original Fantastic Four movies that came out. Either way, he directed Chronicle. That's kind of how he blew up. It was this indie found footage film about these three kids who gain superpowers, and that might sound a little cliche, especially because around the time they came out, the found footage movies were starting to really, really lose traction with stuff like Paranormal Activity and all that coming out. But yeah, it was a wonderful, refreshing just movie, and I think it really did a lot of good for the found footage genre as well as for the kind of superhero movie genre, right? Because it had its own mythology. You had a lot of mystery. It didn't explain too much, but at the same time, it explored these characters gaining these superpowers and what high school kids would look like if they just got random superpowers, I guess. Next up is The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises. Actually, yeah, I mean, I saw The Dark Knight before I saw The Dark Knight. Well, obviously The Dark Knight Rises, but before I saw Batman Begins. It's incredible. It's one of those few movies I would say that's a superhero movie that goes above and beyond its genre and is just a classic. Oh, I'm not gonna say classic; it's pretty recent, but just an outstanding film all on its own, regardless of being a superhero movie. Then with The Dark Knight Rises, I thought it was a great end to the trilogy. I know it might catch a lot of. I don't want to say that it's underrated or anything or overrated. I think it's about rated. We'll call it that. But yeah, I thought it was a great end of the trilogy. I admittedly wish it wasn't as comic bookish as it was. It could have been written out a little bit better, a little bit more fleshed out. But it was one of the few pieces of Batman fiction that actually gave Batman a happy ending. So I give it points for that. And actually, when I first saw this, it was for my buddy Michael's birthday while me and him were both interning under Sean. That's Sean Chandler of Sean Chandler Talks About. And we were interning under him at our church, and I dressed as Bane for the premiere, and then I had been drinking nothing but energy drinks all day, so I had to get up towards the end of the movie when the climax was going on and use the bathroom. They have never let me live that down since. So let's just go ahead and blow past that uncomfortable memory and move on to Django Unchained, baby. So yeah, I love Quentin Tarantino movies, and Django is especially one of those that I just thought was freaking awesome. Now, is it gratuitously and grotesquely violent? Yes. Does it have a lot of commentary on, I guess, just racism in the antebellum period of America? Yes. But at the same time, it's really freaking cool. It's got a lot of gunplay. I thought it was just an incredible movie. Yeah, the characters were just outstanding. Samuel L. Jackson, Jamie Foxx, Christoph Waltz, they all really just brought it to their performances, as well as Leonardo DiCaprio. So, great movie. It's actually got a comic book adaptation, or my bad, Django Zorro, which is a comic book crossover with both Django and Zorro, the Spanish crime fighter. Either way, so really good, really good movie. I enjoyed it. Then we are going to go ahead and move on to Drive and Dunkirk. As I've mentioned, actually, I don't know if I explicitly mentioned it outside of the Batman, the Nolan trilogy of Batman films, but I really like Christopher Nolan. And this is going to sound weird, but I'm not too big on historical epics. I still haven't seen Saving Private Ryan. I know, shame on me. I'm more of a fan of historical comic books, right? Historical fiction as well as biographical comic books, even, than I am like biographical or historical movies. But Dunkirk really, really surprised me. It was a gripping, almost I would call it like a psychological thriller, not just a historical movie or a war movie. So it went really above and beyond in terms of I guess genre fusion. But I don't know. I'm not a movie critic. I don't understand too much about that. But I severely enjoyed myself. That sounds like violent. Like I violently enjoyed myself. Okay, I don't like that. I'm just gonna say it was a good movie and move on. And then Drive. This is the I'm not gonna say cult classic because it really blew up, but we will go ahead and call it the cult classic that made every dude about at or around my age when it came out start wearing Henleys and leather gloves. Don't worry, I only wore Henleys. But yeah, it was a great movie, just really stylish. I really wish every other movie by this dude, Nicholas Winding Refn, or whatever his name is, was as good as Drive, because he's come out with some movies like The Neon Demon and Only God Forgives that just a lot of just were not outstanding films by my by my personal opinion, but watch them, make your own opinion, as I always say. Moving on. Now, as I've mentioned, I'm a fan of animation as well as anime. That's Japanese animation. So I plan on going into a lot more of that as the channel progresses, and part of that is why I have Ghost in the Shell on. Oh my gosh, that light, that reflection is killing things. But Ghost in the Shell on Blu-ray. It's based on this original manga that came out, I think, around in the 80s and 90s. But yeah, they made a original animation on it, and actually they've done this with movies such as Akira as well, and a lot of animated TV shows. Anime that comes out today are also based on manga, not just original ideas. So, and you'll actually get some cross-pollination of TV shows and movies that are based on manga, or even manga and comics that are based on TV shows and movies, especially in the kind of Japanese animation and comic book world. But yeah, Ghost in the Shell was very cool. It's a very interesting techno-noir thriller, and plays around a lot with the idea of what consciousness and cybernetic beings look like in the future. So, then we get, oh hey, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 in Steelbook. I'm trying to collect all of the Marvel movies in Steelbook, which is why you don't see me with too much of them. I mean, and I really enjoyed all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe films, but it's ultra hard to obtain Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 on Steelbook, so I just went ahead and grabbed Volume 2 because I found it in a thrift store. Once again, I didn't enjoy Volume 2 as much as I enjoyed Volume 1, even though that seems to be the popular consensus, but I do plan on doing my MCU ranking video here soon. And I'm actually probably going to do 3 of those, right? I'm going to do one before Captain Marvel comes out, one after Captain Marvel comes out, and then one after Endgame. So stay posted. That tower's about to fall over. What do we got? Oh yeah, the Hulk. Once again, in dealing with my whole Steelbook fanaticism, is that a word? We're going to roll with it. I managed to pick up a copy of the Hulk on Steelbook for pretty cheap. I think they're like $10 on Amazon. If you're in the U.S., I don't know how much they are overseas, so I managed to capitalize it. Yeah, I thought it was the best Hulk movie to come out, but unfortunately, because I think Universal, the studio, still owns the rights to Hulk solo films, so that's why Marvel hasn't, if that's correct, that's why Marvel hasn't put out any Hulk films, well, I guess ever, really. So that's why you've only seen him in like Thor Ragnarok or the Avengers or at the end of Iron Man 3 and the like. So still holding out hope that Marvel regains that property, and we'll see where that goes. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed Edward Norton as the Hulk, but I think Mark Ruffalo does it a little bit better, to be honest. Then let's go ahead and knock out 2 and 1. Inception and Interstellar. Inception was great, but Inception was great, but Interstellar is actually my favorite Nolan movie. I just love space travel. I love what the movie. I don't know. I just love that they stuck to physics, like the physics. So I guess just realistically, they grounded a lot of the science fiction elements in it. And don't get me wrong, as a spoiler, towards the end they start to play more with the fictitious side on the science fiction elements in the film. But at the same time, the physicist who helped Christopher Nolan with the film, I think it was Kip Thorne. Yeah, he was the guy who had to convince Christopher Nolan not to use faster than light travel in the movie. But actually, allegedly, this movie Interstellar is based on one of my favorite Japanese short animations, which is called Voices of a Distant Star, which is by the Japanese animator Makoto Shinkai, who some of you may know from the film Your Name that just came out, which was the body swap science fiction film about a boy and a girl who switch bodies and a meteorite is coming to Earth to hit it. I know, real weird, kind of skip there, but either way, allegedly Christopher Nolan was inspired in part by this work, Voices of a Distant Star, in terms of making Interstellar, and I encourage y'all either read the manga or watch the animated short. You can probably find it on YouTube and see how it connects to Interstellar. Next up, I already went over Inception. Justice League The New Frontier. Nice. Justice League The New Frontier. This was actually one of the first DC animated films I ever watched. Now, so my problem with DC animated films and the current state of the DC animated universe is a lot of them are based on, if I remember the artist's name correctly, Phil Barbosa. I think it's Phil Barbosa. Just a lot of the animation and illustrations are based on his style, which is unfortunate. I mean, they still have great animation and great characterizations of these DC heroes, but it's unfortunate because around the time this this animated work came out, The New Frontier, and during the Batman the Animated Series era, just all around that period, you had these films that would work a lot harder to try and adhere to the original art styles in the comics they were based off of. And I love that. That's what made them so unique and so signature as animated movies, but they've kind of deviated away from that. I'm really hoping it's something that DC will try to regain in the future, but at the same time, yeah, they're still putting out great work. I just wish they'd kind of deviate a little bit more in their art styles in these movies. But yes, great film. It's based on the comic series by Darwin Cook, who unfortunately passed away several years ago, but was one of the most prolific comic artists, especially for DC, just in the comic world. Let's keep it going. And fortunately, y'all, unlike my comic collection video that I did at the end of 2018, so far I think I've done a good job of everything having been alphabetized. So we're going to keep going based on that, and let's see. Let's proceed with Kingsman. This is Kingsman: The Secret Service. So the first of the 2 Kingsman movies, which I should mention, Kingsman is actually based on another graphic novel series of the same name. And this is kind of important because Kingsman is written by Mark Miller, who some of you may know as the author of Kick-Ass, which also has a movie based on it, as well as the author of the original Civil War comic line. I discussed this in my collection video as well because I have the Civil War comic. But yeah, Mark Miller wrote the original Kingsman graphic novel, and yeah, I didn't want to see it, but it was really funny, really surprising. I thought it was just a fun ride, but I have to see the second one, and when I do, I might buy that one on Steelbook as well. We'll see. Oh yeah, that's right, Lord of the Rings, baby. This is actually embarrassing. I love this film. It's just a dream world of magic. Incredible fantasy movie. Shout out to J.R.R. Tolkien. He killed it. But yeah, incredible trilogy. I wish The Hobbit lived up to the same hype as this one did. But at the same time, yeah, this is kind of an embarrassing note. I actually hadn't seen the Lord of the Rings trilogy until last year. Yeah, so that's a lot of people just assume because I read so many comics, I love fantasy and science fiction. Everyone assumed I had read or watched the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy, and I just kept falling asleep during them. I'm gonna be honest. I think it's because I try to watch the extended cuts all the time. Still need to do that. So me and my friend Trey, who used to be my roommate last year, we just grabbed a bunch of monsters and just watched all 3 of them in a row. Best decision of my life so far. Love these movies. Trying to get the other two on Steelbook. More on that later. Then we come to Ninja Scroll. I still need to watch this one. And I say I still need to watch this one because my brother actually recommended it as it's got a pretty good storyline, but it's got gratuitous, we're just going to say gratuitous graphical content. So I got this because it was like $3, and I plan on watching it, maybe donating later. Then I found out that the Blu-ray that is inside is actually a different region, so I can't even watch it. So I went ahead and bought it at I bought the DVD at a thrift store, and I'll probably donate that once I'm done with this. So yeah, Ninja Scroll, haven't watched it, plan on watching it. We'll see how it goes. Then next up is one of my favorite movies of all time, and I say that completely unironically, Pacific Rim. I thought Pacific Rim was an awesome film because of the fact that it took so many big risks in terms of making this kind of somewhat grounded view of mecha, these giant robots in Western civilization. Mecha, giant robots, and all that really got a lot of traction and emerged from Japanese culture, or at least from anime, right? Anime and manga. But I thought that everything that Guillermo del Toro did with Pacific Rim was incredible, from the kaiju, these giant monsters, to the Jaegers, all the giant robots. I still haven't seen Pacific Rim Uprising. It doesn't seem like it'll live up to the original vision of the first movie, all the dark and gritty tones. But yeah, I'm going to have to make that a mission to see that at some point. But yeah, Pacific Rim, the first one, was just an awesome experience for me. I'm not saying it's like the deepest movie on the face of the planet at all, but I'm just saying I got what I paid for. I paid to see giant monsters and giant robots fight, and I got giant robots and giant monsters fighting. So there you go. Yep, finally fell over. Oh well, you win some, you lose some. Boom. Next up is The Raid. And actually, you'll see that I got two of them. One of these is actually The Raid 1 and 2. And The Raid Redemption is just The Raid, the first Raid movie. These, if you are a fan of action movies, you got to check these movies out if you haven't. People like to talk about John Wick as one of the best modern action films, and trust me, they are. But if you like John Wick, especially if you like martial arts films, then The Raid is the movie for you. It uses oh gosh, my brother told me this. My brother's really into martial arts and practices judo and the like. But The Raid actually uses an Indonesian martial arts style called a silat, and the way that it's used in the film is just incredibly destructive. It's got some of the most graphic as well as incredible choreographies I've seen in fight scenes, and yeah, these movies are just incredible. In fact, the plot of the first one is a lot similar to Dredd, for those of y'all who have watched Judge Dredd, and yeah, because it's just all these cops, these SWAT cops, trying to go through a building to a apartment complex, a high-rise, to retrieve this drug lord. If that sounds familiar, like I said, plot is very similar to Dredd, just a lot more fist flying. And then the second one is also great. The main character goes undercover. But yeah, both films are incredible. The second one is shockingly better than the first one. And actually, these films were supposed to get the first one at least, was supposed to get an American remake. So I guess that never happened, or they just shut that project down, which I'm kind of happy about, because a huge part of it is capturing just the martial arts and the brutality of the hand-to-hand fighting. And I don't know that there's enough just experience in American martial arts, or I guess just choreographers, to really capture that. I don't know. I'd love to see it, but I don't think it's happening anytime soon. But then you get to The Raid 2, and the funny thing about why I bought this is not just so I could have both movies, but because the cover work, as y'all notice, is done by this graphic novel artist that I like, Jock. And he actually does a lot of storyboarding for movies such as The Raid and Ex Machina, which was about the robot girl, and we'll go into that later. Either way, yeah, Jock did the cover. He actually also worked on this book called Witches for Image Comics with Scott Snyder, and it's just a great horror comic, but all that to say, great movie. Now we get to The Revenant with Leonardo DiCaprio. Yeah, good movie based on a book, and shockingly, it means that Leonardo DiCaprio pretty much had to get pneumonia in order to win an Oscar. Good movie. Yeah, has an incredibly brutal scene with a bear. Man, that was hard to get through, but pretty dope. You just got to remember that's fictional, because it is very, 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 very violent. Great movie. Scarface. Scarface. Huh, I've been looking. Okay, yeah, I've been looking for this one. Actually, I need to. I still need to watch that one. So I'll find out about what is it, Tony Montana, and just drug lords and all that in a completely I can only assume to be a historically accurate rendition of the drug trade in the Americas. Then Scott Pilgrim versus the World. As I've mentioned, boom, 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 boom. I've got all 6 volumes of the Scott Pilgrim original graphic novel, which the movie is based on. So this is actually one of the graphic novels and movies that got me really big into comics. Towards the tail end of my high school, I guess towards the tail end of high school, I was a junior or a senior. My brother showed me this trailer for this movie, right? And then I started to research it because it looked really awesome. And I found out that it was based on a comic series. So I went to Barnes & Noble, me, my brother, and my mom, and we bought this comic book series, all 5. Then found out that only five comics had been published at the time that the movie was coming out. So we waited and got the 5th one, the 6th one when it finally came out, around the time that the movie was releasing. I love this movie. It's actually one that I've also watched with my roommates in college, and we just all love it. It's an incredible movie. If you haven't seen it, please see it. But here's the thing: it's a great movie, but the graphic novels are even better, shockingly. So if you have seen it or you haven't seen it, I recommend the comic regardless. Then Serenity. Serenity is the continuation of the of the story in Firefly, which is a great series. I say series, but it only had 1 season. Just sci-fi series that's really grounded with this colonial period for Earth as they expand across the galaxy. And yeah, Serenity is the continuation of that. I can't speak to it because it's been on my shelf gathering dust a lot, and I need to see it. So actually, there's a couple of these in my collection that this is embarrassing. I need to watch. So I'll actually gloss over those in a second. I don't watch nearly as many TV shows as I do comics, and especially when I'm trying to keep up with these superhero TV shows like The Punisher and oh dang it, I just realized I haven't watched The Punisher yet. More on that later. And Sicario. I still need to see the second Sicario, Day of the Soldado. But the first Sicario is amazing. I love the director Denis Villeneuve, who worked on Blade Runner 2049, and is directing a Dune film coming soon. But yeah, this was just an incredible thriller. I thought it was wonderful and dark and gritty. And actually, if you are a fan of Sicario, have seen it, I highly recommend the comic series, the Sheriff of Baghdad. So wait, Sheriff of Baghdad, Sheriff of Babylon. But bingo. Okay, I had to make sure. The Sheriff of Babylon. It's by Tom King, the guy who's writing Batman right now. But if you're a fan of, oh my gosh, his lights are gonna kill me. But if you're a fan of Sicario, please check out The Sheriff of Babylon by Tom King. Great gritty narrative in this one as well as a lot of the kind of idea of how much politics play into all of these just wars and crimes and everything going on around us. But yes, let's keep it going. So, bingo. Okay, why did I blank on that? The Social Network. Need to watch this one too, because I'm in an era of social media. You know what? I'm not going to act like I have like an actual strong opinion on Facebook and all that, but I am going to say, yeah, I want to watch this because it's by David Finch, I believe, who's one of my favorite directors as well, having directed stuff like Fight Club as well as Gone Girl and The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. But I need to watch it because the the soundtrack also was amazing. I've listened to the soundtrack but not watched the movie, but I need to catch up with that. Then one of the few other movies I own, MCU movies I own, which is SpiderMan Homecoming. And I managed to get the Steelbook for a great price because I think this is like a European edition Steelbook. So sometimes you'll find that in America for cheaper, and then you can just switch out the DVDs in the case. But I'm trying to collect all of the films all the MCU films in Steelbook. So that's why it's taken me so long, because these things are not cheap. Then Tekkonkinkreet. Tekkonkinkreet. There we go. So yeah, this is just another one of those animated films that kind of gets a lot of traction, or people will talk about in the more nuanced anime circles, I think. So I've just been meaning to check it out. I have no idea whether it's going to be good or not, other than that Eric Nakamura of Giant Robot Magazine says it's one of the best anime movies ever. Well, Eric, we're going to see if that holds up. Yeah, I just found it for $5 in a Goodwill, so we're going to go ahead and see whether I like it or not. I mean, honestly, I'm sure I will. It's a pretty popular film, apparently, so don't think I can go wrong there. Then we move to Transformers the movie. This is the original 1980s movie that came out during the Generation 1 and Generation 2 Transformers. Like the original Bumblebee, like Hot Rod, and Optimus Prime. This is also the movie that features Unicron, the giant planet-eating and planet-destroying monster that's referenced in I think it's referenced in Transformers: The Last Night. But yeah, this movie, I'm in love with this movie. I just love it. Like it's just a whole and massive effort of animation by the animators and a huge, just ambitious risk, especially because the television show and this movie were based on toys. I mean, that is an incredible amount of effort to put forth, but it's an amazing movie. Getting to see Unicron on screen transform is awesome. So yeah, definitely recommend this. Please check this film out if you haven't, especially because if you haven't seen Bumblebee, I recommend it too. Bumblebee's easily the best live-action Transformers movie I've seen, and it has a lot of references from the animated films that it makes, and they're all really good and really solid allusions as well as homages to the Generation 1 Transformers. Westworld Season 1. Another film that I haven't watched in my collection. Actually, the next two I haven't watched, which is Westworld and Whiplash. I gotta admit, I've kind of got a darker... I like these kind of darker, grittier shows because they just... I don't know. I read so many just lighthearted graphic novels and all that that I like to have this counterbalance of like what the medium can do in terms of movies and in terms of movies and comics and books and etc. But that being said, Westworld I've heard great things about, and it's written by Nolan. I believe Jonathan Nolan, Christopher Nolan's brother, and it's it's just a sci-fi TV show. So I've been meaning to check it out. And then you've got Whiplash, which sounds like this whole maddening descent into, well, maddening descent into madness. I'm going to roll with it. So yeah, I've been meaning to watch this as well, especially because it's by, I think, Damien Chazelle, who was also the director of First Man, with Ryan Gosling and all that. So definitely been meaning to check out both of these, this film and this TV show. Just got to make it happen. And then finally, the last movie that I have is You're Next. This is one of the best horror movies I've watched. In fact, I'd even call it an anti-horror, or an anti-horror, where it's very satirical of the horror genre. It's not even that scary to watch. It's clearly got, its foot in horror and a lot of horror elements in it, but it satirizes them in terms of this element of this home invasion horror movie, except with one of the one of the victims in the movie clearly knowing what they're doing, and I won't spoil anything else from there. If you haven't seen it, please watch it. It's not as scary as you think it might be, but when the action picks up in the movie, it is worth every second of it. And that's all, folks. Those are all of my films. I think I counted around 30 plus movies, and this isn't including my digital movie collection. Oh yeah, wait, you know what? There is one more that I have. It's not here because I actually lent it to a friend, but I had this movie, Grave of the Fireflies. Grave of the Fireflies is easily one of the best animated movies I've ever seen. It's by Studio Ghibli, who a lot of you may know from doing the Hayao Miyazaki movies. But Grave of the Fireflies is this story set in World War II about this brother and this sister who are abandoned, no parents, and have to survive for themselves. And it's kind of impressive because it has nothing to do with the atomic bomb. And I say that because a lot of narratives about World War II seem to allude to, or focus on the atomic bombings of Japan. But this one is not about that at all. It's just about the survival of this brother and this sister, what they're having to do in order to protect one another, or rather this older brother to protect his sister. And just this very, very human narrative. I lent that to a friend, and I'm waiting to get it back, but I need to rewatch it again. But I'll testify to this. It is one of those films that you only really need to see once in your life because it is so sad. But it is really a beautiful film that I encourage everyone to see. And that, finally, is the entire list of my films. I think that's around 34 or 35 or somewhere in that ballpark of films. And, that's just my physical collection. I've got 5 to 10 more that are digital, and I know, I just won't include those right now. I might drop them in the comments if anyone's interested in those, or go over my video game collection in a later video as well. But most of those are in fact digital. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in, and this has been another episode of King's Comics. If you have any comments, feedbacks, or suggestions, please drop a line down below. I'd love to hear what you have to say. And guys, thank you so much to all my subscribers. We're at, I think, a little over 500 subscribers now that I've posted this video. So guys, thank you for sticking it through. Thank you for your patience, and more videos coming out soon. And I do mean more videos coming out soon. We ain't going anywhere. And guys, thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time.